this video, I'm going to create an API and then use it to power my own single page application. This is also known as dog fooding or eating your own dog food. It's a popular method used by organizations to kind of test their own APIs in real world scenarios before making them available to third-party consumers. So to do this, I'm going to use Laravel Passport. I already have Laravel open over here to the website, and I'm going to click on documentation. Down here under official packages is where you'll find Passport. Click on Passport, and here's our introduction to Passport. It says Laravel already makes it easy to perform authentication via traditional login forms, but what about APIs? APIs typically use tokens to authenticate users and do not maintain session state between requests. Laravel makes API authentication a breeze using Laravel Passport, which provides a full OAuth 2 server implementation for your Laravel application in a matter of minutes. Passport is built on top of the League OAuth 2 server that is maintained by Andy Millington and Simon Hamp. So we're going to go down here to installation. To get started, install Passport via the Composer package manager. So let's go ahead and copy this. I use Command C to copy. I'm going to open up Terminal. I'm already in the root of my project directory, which is blog, and Command V to paste, and then I'm going to run with enter. Okay, then it says the Passport service provider registers its own database migration directory with the framework, so you should migrate your database after installing the package. The Passport migrations will create the tables your application needs to store clients and access tokens. So we have to run the PHP artisan migrate command. So I'm going to hit Command C to copy. I'm going to go back over to my terminal, Command V to paste, and enter. And we can see there's a few new migration files in here that has to do with OAuth. Then we're going to come down here. It says next you should run the Passport install command. This command will create the encryption keys needed to generate secure access tokens. In addition, the command will create personal access and password grant clients, which will be used to generate access tokens. So I'm going to copy this with Command C. I'm going to go back over here to Terminal and Command V and press enter to run. And it created a client ID with a client secret and another client ID with another client secret. Okay. After running this command, add the Laravel Passport has API tokens trait to your app user model. This trait will provide a few helper methods to your model which allow you to inspect the authenticated user's token and scopes. Okay, so I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to go to my app, and user.php is our user model. So we want to add the has API tokens. Command C to copy this, and I'm going to put it right here. Command V to paste. And then we want to also add the has API tokens right here. So I'm just going to copy this, and Command V to paste, and Command S to save. And next you should call the Passport routes method within the boot method of your auth service provider. This method will register the routes necessary to issue access tokens and revoke access tokens, clients, and personal access tokens. So let's go back into Visual Studio Code and add the Passport routes method within the boot method controller of the auth service provider. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, Passport routes, Command C. I'm back into Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to click on Providers and then Auth Service Provider. And right here, I'll get rid of this and Command V to paste, and then Command S to save. And we also want to add the Laravel Passport right up here underneath gate. Command S to save, And then finally, in your config/auth.php configuration file, you should set the driver option of your API authentication guard to Passport. This will instruct your application to use Passport's token guard when authenticating incoming API requests. So back to Visual Studio Code, and we're going to minimize this, and we'll go to config and auth. And we can scroll down here and it says we want to change driver to Passport, and then Command S to save. Now I'm going to scroll down and front end quick start. Passport ships with a JSON API that you may use to allow users to create clients and personal access tokens. However, it can be time consuming to code a front end to interact with these APIs. So Passport also includes pre-built Vue components you may use as an example implementation or starting point for your own implementation. To publish the Passport Vue components, use vendor publish artisan command. So we'll copy this command right here. We're going to go ahead and add these Vue components. I don't know if we'll use them in this tutorial, but it will be a help later on when we want to open up our API to third parties. So back into terminal, I'm going to Command V to paste and press enter. And we should see a few new components in here. If I scroll down, I'm going to move this over. Down here under resources, JS, components, Passport. So we have a new directory and we have a few new components in here. Cool. All right. Now I want to start setting up some scaffolding for my new API. So I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code, and up top under app, HTTP, controllers, I want to add a new folder in here, and I'm just going to call it API. And that's going to house all my API controllers. And then I'm going to create another folder within that called V1 for version 1. Down the road, there may be additional versions as my application grows, but this allows me to keep things organized for now. In addition to my controllers API V1 folder, I'm going to create a new controller and I'm going to call it login controller. And to do that, we're going to use the PHP artisan command. I'm going to open up my terminal, and if we type PHP artisan make controller, and then we can say API/v1/ and I'm going to call this login controller and press enter. And it just created our login controller. So I'm going to click on that. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up a login function in our login controller. So I'm going to go ahead and add a function in public function login, and the login function will receive a request. And then in that request, we will have a username and password. All right, so the first thing we want to do is validate our incoming request. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll say request validate, and that takes an array. And we'll do email, and we want to validate that email is a, well, first we want to say it's required, and it is a string, but make sure you spell required right. So it's required and it's a string, and we also want to say that password is also required and is a string. All right. Okay, now let's authenticate this incoming request. All right, let's put this into a variable called login, and then we can use it down here. So we'll say if auth attempt, we want to tell it to try to log in. Actually, we're going to say if it fails. So the exclamation point is saying if this does not succeed, give us the opposite of true. We want to return a response, and in that response we want to send a message, and that message will contain invalid login credentials. Okay. In order for this auth to work, we want to make sure we import it up here. So we will just say use Illuminate support facades and then auth. And now we can use the auth here. So far, we've created a login function. We're storing our request validation in a variable called login, and we're just making sure we receive an email and a password. Both of them are required, and both of them are a string. And then we're saying try a login attempt using this information. If it fails, send this response, invalid login credentials. Now we need to tell it what to do if it succeeds. So let's go ahead and create our access token if it succeeds. I wanted to take a quick moment to review the type of authentication we would be using with Laravel Passport. So let's go over here to our Passport documentation, and we're going to go down to personal access tokens. This is the type of access I'm going to be using for my API. So I just wanted to review it real quick so you knew why we were doing what we were doing, and you can come here and review some of the documentation and some of the code I used in this function to achieve what we're achieving with API access. So let's go ahead and review what it says right here. Personal access tokens. Sometimes your users may want to issue access tokens to themselves without going through the typical authorization code redirect flow. Allowing users to issue tokens themselves via your application's UI can be useful for allowing users to experiment with your API, or may serve as a similar approach to issuing access tokens in general. Okay, creating personal access client. Before your application can issue personal access tokens, you will need to create a personal access client. You may do this using the Passport client command with the -- personal option. If you have already run Passport install, which we have, you do not need to run this command. So we can go ahead and skip right over this right here. Now let's go down. Managing personal access tokens. Once you've created a personal access client, you may issue tokens for a given user using the create token method on the user model instance. The create token method accepts the name of the token as the first argument and an optional array of scopes as its second argument. So we're going to be using this down here in the method that we're about to create. I just wanted to review that real quick so you guys knew where I was getting this information from. If you want to do a little more reading on your own, feel free. We're on the Laravel.com docs, version 6, and then the Passport personal access tokens. So let's jump back into our user controller and finish up this login. So we'll put that in a variable, access token, and we'll do auth user, and then we get this create token, and we'll call it auth token, and we want to put access token right here. So we're storing our access token, and then we want to return that in a response back to our user. So let's go ahead and do return response, except this time we want to return the authenticated user as well as the access token. So let's say return the user, and that'll be auth user, and then I'm going to put a comma, and we'll also return the access token, and then we want to pass in that variable access token, and then just close it off. All right, that should be good for this. I'm just double checking. We've included our auth, so we can use it down here. I'm getting a squiggly line here. What did I miss? If auth attempt login, return, and we didn't close this off right here. That should get rid of our squiggly line. Okay, there we go. We're all good. I missed a semicolon. All right, so Command S to save, and this will be our login function, and it should send a user and access token back with this request. Another thing I like to do is make sure that my incoming request routes line up with my routes folder down here, so they're easier to find later on. Right now, all my API requests are just in the routes/api.php, but I want all my incoming API requests to reflect the route that they're going to. So I'm going to add a folder, and I'm going to say new folder, and I'm going to just call that folder API. And then within that folder, I also want to create another folder, and I'm going to call that V1. And then I'm just going to drag my API into there. Go ahead and move it. Okay, so now I have the API V1, and that's going to go to the API.php file. And then I want to come up here to my providers and my route service provider. And I want to tell this service provider right here, this prefix, I want to make sure I change it to reflect the changes I made down here with the new folder. So I'm just going to tell it to go to API/V1. And then right here, my new path is routes API/V1/API. And then go ahead and Command S to save. Now, any incoming requests at blog.com/API/V1 are going to go to my routes/API/V1/API.php file. Now let's go into that routes file and tell our routes how to hit the controllers. We want to make sure we're hitting our login controller up here. So I'm going to go back into the routes API V1 and then API.php. So I'm going to get rid of this for right now. I'm just going to // to get rid of that. And then let's go ahead and I'm going to put a note here just so I know this is going to be all the users' routes. So in Laravel, they have the ability to group and prefix routes. Right now, anything that goes to /API/V1 will end up in this API folder or this API file. And I want it to be /API/V1/users or /user. So in order to do that, we're going to create a prefix, a route prefix, and that will be route prefix, and then the name of the prefix, which will be /user. So we're saying anything at /user, we want to group it, and group takes a, so we'll put function. And now anything that goes inside of this right here will have the /user in front of it. So we want it to be /user/login. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll do, in order to create the route for that, we're just going to say route. And this is going to be a post request. So we'll say post. And we want it to be /login. So we'll do /login. So now we're /API/V1/user/login for our route. And then we want that route to hit our API/V1/login controller, and we want it to hit the method of login. There we go. And I'm going to Command S to save. Okay, now let's try and test that route and see if we're able to log in a user and get back an access token. I'm going to use Postman for this. So I'm going to open up Postman, click the plus sign right here, and earlier we said it would be a post request. So I'm going to say post, and I'll do http://blog8888, and we said it'll be at API/V1/user/login. We also want to pass some form data with that login. So I'm going to go right here and say form data. The form data we want to pass is email, and the value will just be the email. And the other one was password, and that was just password. And if we click send, we're expecting, based on our login controller, if we type the correct information, we're expecting to get our authorized user back along with their access token. So let's go ahead and try that. And there we go. I got my authorized user and my access token. Let's see if we type the wrong password. We'll just add a 1 here. We're expecting it to say invalid login credentials. Let's see if that works. and we get our message back, invalid login credentials. It looks like our API with our personal access token is working. I want to do one other thing and make sure that our API token works to receive information. So let's open up VS Code again, and we'll go back down in here to our routes. And this time I want to create another route, but I want to use the middleware and the auth API. So we'll do route middleware, and we want to tell it to use auth API. And this time it's going to be a GET request. So we'll say GET, and we want the route to be API v1 user. Let's just do all. Let's return all users, and we'll hit the controller at API v1 user, and we'll call it user controller at index. So we're going to hit the user controller at index and close it off. All right, I'm going to Command S to save. And I want to do one other thing, and that's to make a user controller to test this out to make sure that our access token is working. Let's open up Terminal, and I'm going to cd into my blog directory because that's my root directory for the project. And I'm going to type php artisan make controller, and I wanted to make it into the API /v1 we'll do user and then user controller. I'm going to add -- resource, so it'll add a few methods in there for me. So go ahead and press enter, and here I go. I have my user folder and my user controller, and let's just go up here. Right here, I just want to test out that everything's working. So I'm just going to say return user all. So let's go ahead and add use app /user and then Command S to save. All right, now let's see if we can hit this route here. Let me double check. I have it in my routes file, and I have middleware, so I'm going to have to pass the token. I'm going to minimize this, and let's go back over here, and we want to grab our token. So let's grab our token right here, and we'll create a new request. This time it's a GET request. It's going to go to API /v1 /user /all, and I need to add some headers, and it's going to have an authorization header. Oops. Authorization, and I want it to have bearer space token. All right, and let's press send, and we're hoping to get back one user because that's the only user in the database right now. And there we go, we're getting back our Scripster user as we expected. Just to recap, we created a Laravel API using Laravel Passport. We used PHP Artisan to create our Laravel Passport personal access client. Then we used that personal access client to generate our personal access token. We were able to use our personal access token to access our API by sending a header with the keyword authorization and the value of the word bearer followed by our access token.